Well, look at you.
I know. I look like
There
a
he
fat
is.
berry.
No, you're looking how you. I don't think you ever change. I think you always kind of look your handsome self, consistent. I'd say that's what I think.
I'm going to take that. Yeah, I'm happy with the way I look.
When I was younger, people actually said I was very flattered when I was a teenager, and they said that I looked a little bit like you. And actually, at the time, I was closeted. So I think they were kind of trying to say, we think you might be gay, like the gay pop star. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting because, like, saying you're a fan of Will Young was basically like saying was seen as seeing you're gay. It was very. I sort of became that kind of thing, but that's a whole other conversation. No, I like the way I look. I think you're a prettier version of me.
No, that's definitely not true. I am looking quite gay today. I went quite. Obviously, I thought
you've got lovely. You've got large Bambi eyes.
Bambi eyes. Goggly.
A good row of gnashers.
Yeah, they're all right at the moment.
Have you ever had them done?
I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to. You'll have to speak via my. But I will issue a press release later to clarify.
Why would you not comment on that? I'm going to tell you what I've had done. I've had hair plugs.
Right.
I haven't had my teeth done, and
I did kind of have my teeth done, but only because when I was 11 during drama at high school, they you know those warm-up games they do, and they separate the class into two, and they put treasure in the middle. It wasn't treasure, it was some keys, and then they give you corresponding numbers, and I think mine was 3, and then I went bam my tooth into the head of someone called Cam, blood everywhere, and then I had a dead tooth for much of my adolescence, and I only kind of got it fixed when I was like grown up.
Oh, that's not nice.
Yeah,
I had a brace. I had a gap in my teeth, and I had a brace that they used to tighten twice a day, and for like a year, and it was cemented into my top thing, and that was very nice. And then, by the way, I'm sorry, I've been ill, so I'm sounding a bit.
You sound great. You sound great. I was going to say I had the same thing
the last week. Did you have one of those? And then they wanted to break my jaw because they didn't like me because I've got an overbite and a side bite, so they were going to break my jaw and fix it. And my mum said, "Do you really want to go through all that pain for something basically aesthetic?" And I was like, "No, not really."
Yeah, I just think keep breaking jaws to an absolute minimum. That's just a life piece of advice I abide by. I had to say that I had a piece of gum. This is all getting quite. This is now a dentistry themed show. I had a bit of gum there because I had a massive gap between my teeth, and it stopped it closing. So I had to have a general anaesthetic to have that removed, and then I could have the brace there.
There you go. You see, we forget about all these horrors in our past.
Speaking of which, so well, we're very, 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 very honoured to have you. And I was going to say, because you are a part of I'm now what's it called, an old millennial, but there's a certain word, geriatric millennial. I'm a geriatric millennial. That's what we're called.
How old are you?
Well, I'm 36, and I was born in 1984. And you were a big deal I was still closeted when you came out, but for young queer people of that period in particular, big deal. Now we'll talk about your book, To Be a Gay Man. It's not a handbook. I should have brought it's over there. Well, I might get it at the end.
I forget. I forget when it's people I like talking to. I always just think it's a chat. I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, go on. It is a chat. It is a chat, though. Oh, hello. Yeah, but just for those listening to the podcast, Will was just giving the camera a little white. Oh, that's much better.
Yes, look. Oh, God.
Now whatever was smeared all over the camera has been.
It's probably spittle from a Zoom call.
Where Will is getting very, very intense. A lot of aggro. Will is associated, of course, with aggression, popular in the public. Should we start with the cliche? The cliche, this is often what happens for those who are of a heterosexual persuasion, nothing wrong with that, is when often LGBTQ people sit down, maybe for a date or something like that, they often go like, when did you know? Kind of thing, don't they? It's kind of, when did you know you were different? I always think is a good way of doing it. When do you know you're different? So should we start with that? Because I know you talked about fancying Bobby Ewing. I think it was on Dallas. It was, for me, it was David Duchovny in the X-Files, just FYI.
That's a good one.
It was a good one. He was really hot, actually. I pretended I fancied, of course, Scully. What was your experiences then? Come and talk about, gender norms, knowing you just were different.
Yeah, Bobby Ewing was one, because I sort of fancied him, little crushes. I had to wear sort of like national health glasses, and I had a lisp. I still have a lisp now, and if I think about it, it comes out more. My knees knocked together when I ran, and I liked sort of reading from a young age, and I was very sensitive and it was very easy to cry. And my brother and sister used to call me girl, which really upset me. Isn't that interesting? As a boy, it was like the worst. It was like, you're a girl. Oh, no, I'm not. So I think I felt like other, and I was a big thinker and would sit and think a lot, and enjoy it, sort of need that time. So I think probably from about the age of sort of 5, I knew 4, 5. Yeah.
That is early, I have to say. Early. I mean, very early. I mean, did you have that sense? I mean, I remember thinking back. I mean, we all approach these things very differently, but probably, from the age of 12 onwards, I was like, but I didn't come out to myself for many years after that. I mean, because you have to come out to yourself first. Did you have a sense of panic? Because I think, isn't there that sense if you grow up in a straight world where you have this image of how your life is going to pan out and you're going to settle down with a wife and have kids, snatched away, gone, what then? No roadmap.
God, you're so right. This is why you're so right. Yeah, big panic. And I think that set in from a young age and made me feel, probably as I got a bit older, so probably more like around sort of like 11, 12 maybe, but also AIDS and HIV came in, and so I would be witness to these adverts of this, what was called a gay plague, not on the adverts, but that's what it was called. So yes, the roadmap was not there. I was not going to marry Jessica Hanbury, who was my girlfriend when I was 6. And I was like, okay, I'm a sinner because then I'm in Bible classes and, there's Sodom and Gomorrah and turning to pillars of salt. So that's going into my blotting, your brain is like blotting paper as you're growing up, sponge, taking it all in. I'm a sinner, so I'm not going to heaven, so I'm going to hell. I'm evil, effectively. I'm going to die anyway because I'm going to get AIDS, so I'll die young. And I'll probably never come out. So that's not nice. So I'm in a sort of helpless position of sort of like limbo, almost like purgatory, which many, many gay men were and maybe still are, in a sort of purgatory. The Kenneth Williams living with his mother, Charles Hawtrey, maybe not so much him. Larry Grayson, the gay man that's funny but isn't sexual. So yeah, I think there was a lot of panic, which probably denoted a sort of freeze response and a deep sense of hopelessness. Yeah. Which is really interesting to look back on because I don't feel that now. But there's something, it's funny when I say those kind of things because people are like, oh my God, how awful. And it's like, what's amazing is I did, and so many queer people that have grown up in a heteronormative society, patriarchal society, they fucking get through it. Mm-hmm. Living with those awful feelings, and they bloody survive and get through it. Quite amazing.
It is odd, isn't it? I mean, that sense, some particular, younger gay people, not just younger gay people, but and certainly more so then, but still many feel this now, of if I come out, I'll never be happy. You know, I remember thinking, I mean, I don't know if you ever got these kind of like weird lifeboat moments, or like something you read or a snippet of something you see on television, which is like, that is now my life raft. So for example, I remember watching on daytime television, and I must have been like 14, and some gay man, he's probably like on This Morning or something like that, and he was like, you know, when I was a teenager and I thought I was gay, and I thought my life was over and I'd never be happy. And it was like, and that didn't happen. Obviously, I'm really happy now. But it is true. That's how it can feel, doesn't it? It feels like, you know, you'll be lonely. It's no life. I think that's a cliche, actually, some people used to say about being gay, didn't they?
That's really interesting. Yeah. And it was because again, oh, someone at the door.
Oh, that's someone at the door. Ignore.
Amazon. No, it's interesting because I did pick up things from what I would hear from my parents, you know, and there would be little snippets like, oh, that's so-and-so's brother. Yes, he's gay. But no one ever talks about that. Or, you know, and I'd look at them, I'd be at a wedding or something, and I'd see so-and-so's brother and think, there was always a sense of sadness that surrounded anyone that was gay, although she's never married. We've always wondered, you know, and there was always a sadness. They didn't have children. They wouldn't have an open partner at any of those events that me as a child would sort of, you know, have access to. Weddings, kind of big, you know, family parties. And there was a sense of being an outcast and not being happy. They're not happy people, you know, and we don't talk about it. My grandmother was like, all her friends were gay. We don't talk about it, you know, and that's so my sense of what a gay man was, because there was no reference, no life raft moments, you know, as you say, beautifully say, on TV, apart from disgust at people like Julian Clary saying, you know, I've just been fisted by Norman Lamont. One of the best sayings, I think, ever.
If anyone's never seen this clip,
yeah,
go on YouTube after this. Don't stop listening or watching this, but do Julian Clary. It's just Julian Clary at the. I can't remember.
It was the TV Awards or something like that.
Just type in, Norman Lamont, Julian Clary.
Yeah, but you know, people like him, you know, then would be discussions about them, you know, dirty puffs on TV, and so my only form of reference was, yeah, maybe what stuff I've said already, and then that gay men were just very sad, insular, lonely, isolated people. Interesting.
I mean, I remember I did this. This was always an ambition of mine growing up, to be on like I Love 1990s, and I did this show, and I remember
those.
You know, where you're talking head, love it. But they made us watch Panorama from 1997, and it had this. It was called The Gay Agenda, hilarious. But they had this Labour MP who was obviously very homophobic in his working men's club, and they just interviewed people. And one of them, this guy, was like, "Do you know what? If my son was a murderer or a rapist, I'd forgive him. But if he were gay, I wish he were dead." And you kind of watch that and think, wow, gay people watch that.
Yeah, what a fucking thing. I mean, shit me. What a thing to see. It's very interesting. And it's very interesting writing the book as someone that has worked through gay shame and really realizing. I remember when I did women's studies at university, so it was my fourth choice, my fourth option. Basically, I didn't want to do it. And I got it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a posh white gay man. And I walked into the room, and my tutor, who was amazing, was had short hair, DM boots, and was breastfeeding her child. I thought, we are not going to get on. I was very close-minded. One of the best things I ever did, became a feminist and challenged the patriarchal society. Didn't even know about it, and was challenging all these things around me. And that I use that as an example, because that writing the book, I was looking at forensically every lesson, everything that I was taking in from day dot. And I was like, wow, fuck me. That is difficult. you did really well to get through that. You know, because being gay, for me, I also realised it's not sexual when you're 5. You know, you have a crush on Bobby Ewing, but you know, it's more than that. And I realised there's a lot more to being gay. I was a gay young boy, you know, and I loved pony books and I loved fashion. I loved my mum's fashion. I was sensitive. I read, you know, all those things. And it's amazing that I got through it, actually.
I mean, this book, by the way, everyone must read this book. It is a beautifully written, brilliant book, which I will keep plugging. I mean, you talked about, you know, those looking for gay sexual experiences on television or the internet. And I think when I was 14, Queer as Folk came out, which was like gay sex on TV. This Life, people often forget This Life was a brilliant drama in the mid-90s. One of the first shows to have gay sex on television in a mainstream drama. But I remember as well, look when we got the internet, you had the modem, bidong. And looking up, gay pornography, and then suddenly you'd be an image would go dum dum, and your mum tried ringing someone when you're on the internet, and she suddenly heard her go do do do, and then hello when you anyway. What? Tell me about those experiences.
Oh God! Well, you know what's so funny? I was watching something last night, and they were dialing up. It was it was based in whenever it was, and they were dialing up on the internet, and I heard that, and literally I was like, triggered. So I used to go into the spare room, used to be my sister's room, still covered in Cure pictures, and the ironing room, and there was the internet on this one big computer, and I used to go in when everyone was asleep, put towels. Hello, Domino. The dog's come in to say hello. Hello. Are you okay? Yes. I love you. And we'd put towels over the modem to cover the noise of the and then look up pictures of gay porn and sometimes find a video. But it was absolutely terrifying. I masturbated in fear, I think.
A tradition which continues to this day. So joking.
And I remember writing about that in the book. I think because that was a way that I came across gay sex, basically. You know, okay, maybe it's not. Well, no, actually, it is what it is, isn't it? You always everyone looks at porn lots of people do when they're teenagers. I had no access to it. The other thing I used to do I then found a shop in Victoria Tube Station. I think I write about this in the book, and I saw gay pornography on the top shelf. So I plucked up courage to go in there, buy the gay pornography, and then randomly like some polo mints. Why? And would then get the train back down to the countryside to my family home, look at the porn, wank in the train loo, and then terrified shove the porn in the bin in the loo, and then get off at Hungerford and get picked up by my parents. But there was a lot of terror surrounding it still, and I thought that everyone was looking at me in the shop and that they were disgusted with me. You know, a lot of inner disgust leading to a lot of projection that people were noticing, and so it was experiencing it, my sexuality, but not in a nice pure way, in a very scared, frightened way. Yeah.
So, I mean, coming out for lots of people, particularly in that age, was that age. I mean, it wasn't a different era. Well, it was a different era, but it wasn't different complete, it wasn't that long ago. And that's the point I was going to make, actually, because, coming out is, and people talk about sometimes coming out as one moment, an event, but it's actually having to come out lots of different times. And that's without being in the public domain. Now, you were on Pop Idol, and this was such a big cultural moment. It was huge. Everyone was obsessed with it. And it was you, it was Gareth Gates, and it was just this big, not clash, but it was the big kind of competition.
Yeah.
It was huge. But just tell me about that, because in the 90s, people I think do look back at the 90s, and I think sometimes, without going down this road, sometimes people look at like old Friends episodes who are like young millennials or Generation Z and go, the stuff they say about gay people and like trans people is really off. Like the butt of the joke is often, oh my God, are you actually secretly gay? You know, stuff like that. But actually, you know, people think of the 90s as this liberal utopian. It wasn't. I mean, the British Social Attitude Survey showed that the year after you came out, so this is after you had come out, 40% of Britons thought being gay was wrong, and just 37% thought it was not wrong at all. So even when, you know, in the early 2000s, social attitudes on gay people were still very, very divided indeed.
Wow.
So just tell me what that was like, you knowing you're gay, you're now suddenly being thrust into the, you know, the show. What am I going to do? Do I come out? Do I not? Just tell me what that was like, that whole period.
Well, I didn't know that statistic. I wish I'd put that in my book. It would have been another way of setting a context of the time. Well, there's a few things. I think one when one's living in a time, you know, you don't. I didn't have the space to sit back and go, oh, this is a bit wrong. It was just what it was. So yes, it was a very prejudiced, unpleasant time to be gay. And for some reason, because I had come out at university, my first year, for some reason, even though I wasn't happy, and probably I wasn't happy in myself still as a gay man, I was damned if I was going to lie and live in secret. I don't know where that kind of tenacity and strength came from. Probably my parents are quite anti-establishment, and I'm quite anti-establishment and don't like the system. So part of that was probably like, yeah, fuck you all. I was just damned if I was going to go in. So I wasn't scared about what it might do. I was asked during the show to not talk about it. And I got very cross with the then, you know, because I had a politics degree. I had lived a life. I traveled through Africa. Money didn't impress me because I came from an affluent family. So all those things that people could use, power, you know, these people are giving you a free thing, didn't impress me. It was just there for the singing. And I wanted to win, and I was going to win, and I was going to have a career. I'd had a period of depression already at university. I'd lost a very close family friend. So I'd had experiences. And so I wasn't scared of these people. So they couldn't sort of corral me. And when they said, don't talk about it, I went off on one and was like, no, absolutely not. How dare you? If someone asks me outright, I will say, you know, I didn't go through that period at university, which was hard, to then go backwards. So I was quite kind of stubborn about it. And I'd made a decision that if people didn't want to like my music because I was gay, then I didn't want them listening to my music anyway. And I'll just go on and do another career. So it was weird, but I think I was quite stubborn about the whole thing. Yeah.
Tell me about, you know, these threats to be outed. You had this awful graffiti. I think it was graffiti. Tell me about that.
Yes. Yeah, well, that was awful. Yeah. I mean, once I did come out publicly, I was always going to do it. My manager, Simon Fuller, was brilliant. Didn't give a shit about me being gay. And we were going to do it through a broadsheet because we thought it'd be an interesting way of doing it, sort of slightly desensationalize it and also take, you know, chop the head of the beast off, so to speak, because of course people knew I was gay. because I was out at university. There were moments of threats during the show. There's one really particularly unpleasant man who used to work at a magazine. I won't even grace him with his name, but he piped down. And then it was the Sunday Mail. We're going to run it. So we, in the end, I think we went with, I can't remember who we went with. News of the World, Sun maybe. Blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah, I would get nasty things said. You know, I remember graffiti on us. There was a platform when we did the Pop Idol tour. It was a very big arena tour. And there was a platform that would rise up. And so as we'd get on the platform underneath the stage, and on the walls, someone had written faggot. And that same day I'd been in a cafe, and I remember some teenager girl, this was very interesting actually. She was a teenager. She shoved the phone in my face and said, "Speak to my mother." And I said, "Oh, yeah, rather not, if that's all right. I'm just getting a sandwich, but send my love, you know." And as I got to the door, it's one of my favorite cafes I used to go to. She said, "Oh, is it because I'm a girl?" Because it had just come out that I was gay. And I was quite shocked by that. It was quite a thing to say. You know, homophobia from a woman has a different edge to it. It's more surprising and it's almost more cruel. And I turned around, you know, it's one of my moments, and went, "No, it's because you're fucking rude." I was quite pleased with myself about that. But no, there were nasty things, horrible articles written by women, actually, again, you know, basically sort of saying I was part of a sort of gay abusive bullying ring at school. And I never sued the people because I was too scared of the papers. And it's one of my sadnesses that I didn't, because it really hurt me. Yeah, that wasn't very nice. So it would happen. It would happen occasionally. But again, it was just the way it was then. There was no sense of like justice. That's how gay people were treated. And my whole point about the book is, because I was famous, it gives a sort of extra microscopic look at how gay men were treated. It's not I'm special. It's like, look at what happened. You know, look what was written about us. But there was no sense of recourse to justice, or just was what it was. Yeah, crazy, really.
Did you have gay people at the time saying to you, "Thank you so much, you coming out, that makes a difference," that kind of thing?
I did.
You feel any obligation, not that you should do, by the way, but kind of like, I am now a gay person in the public domain?
I didn't, but I did. I remember, I mean, you know, also like, you know, I was just a student, just come out of university. And I remember getting flowers from Elton and David. I never spoke to him about that. I suppose it was quite in a moment for them to see someone come out from the beginning of their career. And I remember thinking, how the hell did they know my address? But then it's Elton. He's probably listening now. Maybe I did think, well, that the gay famous people who would be around would rally a bit. But most of them did. Ian McKellen, lovely. You know. So those kind of things were really special. And I did get lovely letters, and I still get lovely letters and messages. And that's really cool. I mean, that's really got nothing to do with me. I just like potted about. And if it allowed someone, I was probably like quite an accessible gay man. You know, I was fairly kind of neutered in my sexuality then. So I think I probably offered a lot of people, they were like, it's all right, I might end up like Will Young. You know, there was a bit of that. He's like, he's nice. You can take him home to your mum. So and for a while I was quite ashamed of that because I thought, oh, nice Will Young. God, how boring. But actually, now I look back, I think, well, there's worse things to be said about me than nice.
Actually, personally, I found it helpful when you came out. So thanks, selfishly. Just on Elton John, do you think it's worth saying? Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. Cheers, actually. Elton John, I think, because I think the way he's sometimes portrayed in the public domain is so different from him. And I just, as an example, because he's very caring, I think, particularly to LGBTQ people in the public eye in some form. When I walked out of Sky News in 2016 after the Orlando massacre, I'm not going to go into that again, but
moment.
It was certainly a moment. But I get all these. My phone went ridiculous, but I kept getting this number, and it was just like a random number over and over again. And I just thought it was a local radio station. And then I picked up. He was like, "Hey, it's Elton." It was just really random, and he was just there just to be really sweet, really supportive. He's
super cool. He's super cool, and he's got an amazing maternal instinct about him. And we're not friends. However, I know that if I ever had a problem, he'd be there in a heartbeat. And he listens to everyone's music. He knows it all. He would have heard my new songs. He's a fan of music and he celebrates people, and that's so lovely. And it was probably, I tell you who else was nice, was Robbie Williams. He was really nice, but I think maybe I needed that. It was nice to have that little bit of support. Not that I was looking or feeling necessarily like bombarded, but it was a crazy time. Yeah.
One of the things I'm interested in, I actually spoke about this with you a few years ago, is about, I call this how homophobia is a form of gender policing. So obviously if you're queer, you're the main victims of homophobia, shouldn't need to be said. But in general, like growing up, and you touched on this whole kind of when, being called a girl, that kind of thing. But a lot of homophobia is actually about being seen to betray what it is to be a man. So for straight men are often the receiving end. So if they're not sporty enough, they don't get into fights enough, they don't talk about women in a leering, degrading way. It's like, oh, you gay or something, or worse, are you a puff? It's just quite interesting, isn't it, that a lot of it is driven by this sense of a very obviously one-dimensional and harsh and intolerant interpretation of being a man. And it's almost like a baton to beat anyone who kind of steps out of that.
Yes, it was used as well, I think you said once, and I hope, or I wonder if I even quote you in the book, as saying the people that suffer most from homophobia are young straight men, that they get, if you're not sporty, like you said, or perhaps you like theatre or, anything other than wanting to play football and leer at women, then, oh, you're gay is used as the worst form of insult. It's interesting. So I wonder if I was thinking about sort of school days, and I was saying that, is it gender stereotyping, or is it still that to be gay is the worst, is the most, worst thing that can happen to a child and then to their parents and their family? So, for example, let's say there's a girl that's, I'm just going to make it up, wins the shot put over the boys at school, if they have shot put, or there's the boy that all the parents are watching, age 7 at sports day, and he's way behind all the other boys and girls in winning the running race. That there's a sort of instant sense of that's unspoken, that is like, wow, they're displaying signs of possibly being gay, and and that is the worst. And I think that parents have a huge responsibility to look at their own prejudices and fears of having children who might be anything other than the gender norm, because they're terrified that their children or their child is going to be gay. And I think there's still a lot of parents that are like that. Now, they might be terrified because to be gay was, to live a life of isolation and sadness. And, they might be terrified because it will bring shame on their family. They might be just downright prejudiced and horrible people. But I still think it happens a lot. I still think the undercurrent is, if they're displaying those signs, Johnny really likes theatre. He's very good, isn't he? I don't. So what I'm saying is, I think that to be gay is still seen as an awful thing for, to happen to a child. And so if you're displaying anything other than gender norms, that's the kind of end result, is that, I think. Coinciding with that, trying to prescribe children into going along this kind of tractor beam of gender norms is just so damaging to them. And there's been a lot of, conversation about that, I'd say, over the last 10, 15 years. So I really hope that isn't happening as much. And I don't think it is. But I don't think that the sense of, my God, they might end up being actually gay has gone as much as people would say it has.
And you can tell a bit, because even I don't want to be shame people for this, because these are often people, this is a society where we live, but you get like straight men who'd be like, yeah, gay rights the way, rah, rah, rah. But if someone were like, oh, I thought you were gay, they would be actually quite offended and upset. And like, they'd be like, what?
Oh yeah, I can see it. There's some people that I see near a friend of mine, and it's a sort of house of lads, and I can just see it with some of the lads that live there. I could just see it. And I can see that one of them has a problem with me, because he's so uncomfortable. I can just tell you, I don't know if you have it, but I can just tell that he has a real problem with me being gay. Because it'll be something in him. And I don't have a problem with that, because I don't know what that thing could be. It could be anything. So I respect that. But it's got a certain quality to it that, as a gay man, I think you pick up instantly. And also listen to that instinct. Don't second guess yourself. But it's difficult for straight men, It's really difficult, because they're like, what the fuck can I do? Okay, obviously, they grow up in a patriarchal society, but it is difficult. I would not want to be a straight man. My God, like, it's not easy. Don't show your emotions. Don't, invest in yourself internally and look at your workings, and don't accept your sexuality as a straight man, succeed, all those kind of things. Look a certain way. It's a lot more now, I think. We've followed America with, like, for men now, you just see so many gymmed up men. I'm like, what are we, LA? Do you know what I mean? I do live in Clapham, but I think it's a thing for straight guys, body shaming, massive. So I don't think it's easy at all.
In terms of just a couple of other things that I'm really interested in, and I thought this watching It's a Sin, and obviously this was a brilliant drama by typically the genius of Russell T Davies about the horrors of the HIV/AIDS.
Lord Russell.
Lord Russell, indeed, who came down from LGBTQ heaven one day to bless us all. It's a Sin, and it one of the things it did, and for those who haven't watched it, a bit weird, but do watch it, by the way, is it obviously the horrors of the HIV/AIDS endemic and pandemic in this country, and what it did to gay, bisexual community. But what it, I think, showed is how LGBTQ people are damaged by, often not just society, but by their parents. And there's always this idea of parents know best, that kind of thing. And that LGBTQ people end up being this substitute family that have to pick up the pieces. Because if we look at mental health, mental trauma is far higher amongst LGBTQ people than the rest of society. And with that comes often abusive self-medication. So levels of alcohol and drug misuse are significantly higher, much higher actually, amongst LGBTQ people.
Yes, yeah.
And often all of us have had experiences with, I'm sure, with other having to look after LGBTQ people who frankly did not get the acceptance that an affirmation they should have got from their parents. And that was like a ticking time bomb that was implanted in them. And one day it just goes off. And do you feel that kind of that, you know, you get people that damage, people feel it in different ways. Some cope, some don't. And other LGBTQ people are there as a family to pick it up.
I don't know if I relate to the parent thing.
Oh, not my parents, I should say. Sorry. I don't mean my parents. I mean
no. I didn't
other
think
people's
that.
parents.
Yeah, no, and you were referencing it's a sin, and so I, completely got that. No, I will have it on the record now. Your parents are fabulous. Never met them, but look what they've produced.
So, they did the best.
Couldn't have gone that wrong. We won't go down the Philip Larkin route. I think there's so much from what you just said that I'd love to unpack. I think I love the idea. I love, that sort of idea of an LGBT, Q plus family and people acting as family because that's beautiful. I think it might be a little bit rose tinted. I don't know if I necessarily feel that. Some of that in the past might be my own internalized homophobia. So I'd love it if that was the case, but I don't know if I've lived in that kind of bubble of like, it's okay because I've got my gay brothers and sisters, but I do kind of feel it. For example, I met someone recently on the street. I was just talking because I stand outside my house pretending to water my plants, but because I'm a nosy bitch, I talk to everyone that goes past. And I live alone, what can I say? And this girl walked past, she's got the most amazing tattoos, and we started talking about her and her girlfriend. And when I found out she was gay, I just had an instant sort of melting because I did feel like, okay, yeah, I get you. And that's beautiful. So in that sense, I feel a sense of family and connection and safety. So important. I think in terms of mental health, listen, how can you not, if you're not feeling safe in school, you're not feeling safe at home, the messages you're getting are constantly, you're wrong. And if you look for transgender people, it is horrific, particularly now still. I do believe that internalized shame is a huge drive towards people having, LGBTQ plus people having problems with addiction, problems with mental health, and all those kind of things that then happen. And so, of course, there's a correlating rise if you see the numbers, in suicide attempts, in addiction problems, people going towards all sorts of things, chemsex, it's become worse and worse. It just makes sense. Because if you grow up feeling wrong and defunct, and that you really are just not even worth any sort of value because of your sexuality, that is going to take its toll. And it doesn't go. When I read The Velvet Rage when I was 32, it was really interesting because it was like, it doesn't go. I took really good bits from the book, and other bits I didn't like, I didn't take. But one of the things I thought was a bit of an aha moment for me was, just because you've come out doesn't mean all that shame's been dealt with. You got a backlog. So what happens is people come out, they go into a world, find their queer family, but it doesn't mean they've dealt with their internalized homophobia, their internalized shame, and that then comes and bites you in the arse later on. And it certainly did with me. It did. I was watching too much porn. I was buying too much, spending too much because I could. was probably drinking too much, never really had a problem with drugs, probably smoking too much. And then other addictive things that we have, like thought addiction. We all go into loops of thought. No one ever talks about that. Behavioral patterns that are forms of addiction. So I certainly had that. And I think, probably a lot of it was driven by shame, not feeling good enough. Yeah.
Just finally, but actually, I'll ask a final roundup question. But you mentioned trans people. So say that again.
I've never had Botox. It's all just me.
And do you know what? You have the same, what starts as a curse but ends as a blessing, which is youthful, eternal youth.
Well, my mother, I must say, I mean, I don't like seeing my mug next to you because you look like a little cherub. You're a cross between a cherub and Bambi, and I'll hear no more about him. But my mother and my grandmother, very youthful. My mum drives around. She's 68, and she drives around in a Japanese supercar. And I think she's got about 5 tattoos now. And she's very upset Glastonbury's not happening. I mean, she's so cool. She can also be a nightmare, but I kind of love her for that. She's quite an inspiration. She
sounds like an icon.
She's kind of is a bit of an icon, but she's got a problem because, I mean, people do think she's the local drug dealer.
Well, I'm sure she's unbelievably proud of you.
I doubt it. Go on. I think
trans people. I'm really interested in the parallels there, because the way gay people would, and I mean, it's not gone away, but traditionally in the media in the 80s, in particular, a lot of the 90s, it was gay people are potential sexual predators. Gay people are going to brainwash children, which is why Section 28 was, of course, introduced. It was biology is destiny. God made Adam and Eve. He didn't make Adam and Steve. It was that it was a mental illness. It was that we were some sort of weird fetish. It was that why should the majority have to redefine who they are because of the whims of a tiny minority? All of these things are being played out again. Don't you think? About trans people, it's exactly the same tunes all over again.
Exactly the same tunes. I was driving along in London, and I saw a trans woman. First of all, I thought the school kids were shouting at me because I used to get a lot of abuse from school kids. It's quite sad, isn't it? But anyway, young lads. It's like, oh, fuck off. And then I saw her. I can't remember her name. And I pulled up round the corner and I stopped because I saw some police. And I said, look, I just want to let you know, this person. And I suddenly realized she was on her way back from work. It's like, and, schools was breaking up, end of the day. She must walk past that school every day, how many days a year, and get that abuse every day, every morning. And actually I stopped and I spoke to her, and the police did. They were amazing, by the way. She was like, it happens every morning. It happens every day, 5 days a week. How many weeks in the year? And I just was like, it makes me feel really sad, actually. And I also feel I had so much admiration for her, because I just thought, how do you manage that? I mean, I managed it, but I'd also had the protection of chauffeur-driven cars and being famous. Being famous is a bit of a trump card, because in the end you sort of win. I took on a guy in a gym once. He was on his phone. He was a tosser. He was on his phone talking really loudly. And I was like, oh, just fuck off. And he's like, oh, money. He was like 28 and he was quite blokey. And I said, is there any chance you could speak outside? And he kind of squared up to me. But then I saw he recognized me, and I thought, being famous top trumps. You're not going to hit me because you'll get in the papers and you lose your job. Do you know what I mean? But this woman, I think they get it so badly, and it's not something that I can understand. I don't walk in their shoes, but yeah, it's horrific. And I don't really get. It's just fear, isn't it? People are scared, and it'll calm down. But yeah, it's not good. It's a long-winded way of saying you're completely right in what you've just said. Yeah. What's going to happen? What do you think will happen? Do you think is it moving in the right direction?
I think what I would say, and obviously I need to be careful of the lane that I'm in because it's not my lane. And I know talking to trans people, trans friends of mine, a lot of them are like, we just want to leave the country now.
Really?
Kind of looking for their passports kind of moment. But I would say that I'm without going darkest before it's dawn, you know, the Section 28, which was introduced in 1988, which banned the so-called promotion of homosexuality in schools above all else. That was the first homophobic legislation introduced in this country for generations. So I suppose if you're going to be really depressed at the time, you would look at that. And in the 80s, attitudes, according to the annual British Social Attitude Survey, towards gay people got worse and worse every single year throughout the 1980s. Until in 1988, 2/3 of the population thought being gay was wrong and about 11% thought it wasn't. And I think what I'd say is often when a civil rights movement or a minority makes strides, they get a very intense backlash, which can feel overwhelming and horrific. And what gives me hope about the current moment is if you look at the polling, attitudes towards trans people are far, far more favorable than they were towards cis, that's people who aren't trans, gay people and bisexual people in the 1980s, like a lot more. And the most pro-trans, as you would expect, are women by a very long margin, which is why when people say it's an attack on women, it doesn't make any sense because the polling shows it's men who have the biggest problem with trans rights and trans people. And younger women are the most pro-trans rights, and older men, not all older men, I know, but older men tend to be the most transphobic. And I think what that shows is it's generational wise, younger people take trans rights as an article of faith for lots of people in a way that even me as a old millennial, my section of that generation didn't when we were teenagers at all. I didn't stand trans rights at all when I was a teenager, and I had to be educated by trans people. So I think, again, I need to be careful. It's not my lane, but I think, of course, they're going to win. I mean, trans people will win. Trans rights will be won, and trans people will be accepted as equal members of society who will be able to flourish and live happy lives. The issue is the trauma in the moment, in the period going up to that, and there will be times when things feel like they are going backwards, which they do at the moment. But that's what happened with gay people as well. And in the end, we'll all win. The issue is how much damage and trauma is going to be inflicted on human beings along the way. And that's what's horrific. It's obvious how the story ends, but that doesn't airbrush out the horrible suffering that's going to be there.
No, what's going on in that during that journey. Yeah. I mean, you said something, and I just wanted to.
No, I was going to ask a final question.
My dog started snoring, and it sort of slightly took me off balance.
Oh, it's quite. I always find our cats when they start snoring, I find it something quite reassuring about it.
But he can sound like a fucking freight train.
Yeah, ours don't. Ours are just like.
That's gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Oh, they are. They're very sweet. Do check them out on Instagram. Nice little plug. Instagram.com/OwenJones84.
Yeah.
On
dog range coming out.
Yeah, exactly. They are very. People do stop me in the street and ask me about my cats. They are socialist celebrity cats. Final question: what if you had to go back to your younger self when you were closeted? What do you think the main thing you would tell yourself about being gay that you would have liked to have known if
This is like chair work I used to do with my therapist, Lois Evans, who famously said to me, if I was your boyfriend, I'd dump you.
Rude.
Amazing. She also said, see these Tiffany earrings? When on our last session, because we finished, forever, we'd done the work. She went, You pay for those. Amazing woman. What would I say, or how would I? It's interesting because you saying that question brings up some sadness in me, which clearly shows that, it's still there and probably always going to be there, a sense of how difficult it was, for me as a young boy, feeling quite isolated. I think that I'd take him to like exhibitions and say, you can read as many pony books as you want. Probably buy him a She-Ra model. Yeah. And outwardly encourage the fact that he was given an extra He-Man, and the He-Man, they used to go out with each other.
Cute.
How cute's that?
That's very cute.
Yeah, that's what I'd do. Yeah. He was quite a sweet little kid, actually.
You know what? Well, you carried on being a cute adult kid. That's a bit of a weird thing to say. Your cuteness has persisted. Now it just sounds like really weird flirtation on to wrap things up.
It's all right. It's all right. I know your partner. It's all fine. It's appropriate.
He doesn't exist.
He's gone. Cat's eaten.
He does, but he's protected. So it's a big, big honor, Will. That was absolutely brilliant. And I have to say to everyone, the book, To Be a Gay Man, is brilliant. It is so wonderfully written. It's moving. It's insightful. It doesn't matter if you're heterosexual. It's got nothing against you. You will get a huge amount from it, and you will learn a huge amount. I learned a huge amount, and I think Will's humanity and fun sort of oozed out in this interview, and it oozes out in the book. It oozes. I'm not sure about the word ooze.
No, ooze is good. Ooze. Yeah, because you don't want to write stuff. There's nothing worse than earnestness, is there? Earnestness is so boring. So I use comedy in a deliberate way, because otherwise it's a whole book of very dull things, and also life's fucking funny. Life is really funny. A postman came up to me last week and went, "God, you've put on weight," and that's funny.
Rude. You're looking great.
It's funny.
Yeah, it's okay. It can be funny depending
Funny
on
things can happen, but also a lot of sad, hard things happen. So that's life, really, isn't it?
You could almost say that life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
I can't believe, honestly, I've really enjoyed talking to you, but you've now just said that, and I just think, what the fuck?
It's a great film. It's a great film. It is a great film. I watch it. I comfort watch it sometimes.
Do you?
Well, not for a while. I don't think I've seen it for like 5 years, but
I comfort watch Pretty Woman.
Or Bridesmaids. Brilliant comfort watching.
Well, Bridesmaids the best.
We watch that a lot with my partner, who we've just discussed. Bridesmaids is a great. It's just, I tried making my mum watch it. It didn't work at all. She was like,
"Oh, she loves it." But I think it's brilliantly written as well, because you've got that thing of how friends pretend to be happy for other friends. That's what's genius about it. She's like, "I'm getting married," and the best friend's like, "I'm not really happy." She's not happy for her at all. And so often I say to my friends, when my friend got engaged, I can see the clock, so it's like an hour's up. It's like being on live radio. When my friend got engaged, I actually owned my stuff, my shit, and I said to her, "I'm so happy for you." I said, "I'm also really envious, and I'm unhappy for myself, because at the time I was feeling single and sad," and I owned it. And she was fucking amazing. She was like, "Totally get it."
Yeah, I mean, it's someone said, one of my friends, like, whenever one of my friends succeeds, a part of me dies. Before we go, I'm going to just show you Keir. Keir has just arrived, my cat. Beautiful Keir. 1 second, stay there.
So beautiful.
Call me.
Oh,
look. Will.
Look.
He doesn't really want to do it. Oh, come on.
Hello, my darling. You liked me when you met me last time. You wanted to sit on the bed.
He was a big fan. I think what he's doing right now is, I don't want to be here. Just put me down. And he's just like, I just have to get through this.
Yeah, I can see. Daddy wants to cuddle me.
He is very affectionate, I should say, to anyone who thinks this isn't an affectionate cat, but he's just not in the mood for it. He's just like,
I think that breed also are very affectionate, aren't they? Well, I'm going to show you my dog.
Yes, come on.
Mosquito bites all over my arm. Where are you, John?
For those who can't, obviously, if you're listening to the podcast, Will has a wonderful, beautiful, largely white dog, I would say, with bits of looks beautiful.
Yeah, he's I rescued him. He's enormous. Him and his daughter, I think. He still is very bad around other dogs. But the trainer's coming. He's just changed my life. Rescue an animal if you can. That's what I would say, because the bond is very, very special.
So we've got 2 tasks at the end of this podcast for people: buy To Be a Gay Man and read it, or get the audiobook, or both, and rescue an animal. Those are your 2 tasks. Go.
Easy. What are you waiting for? you idiots.
Yeah, you clowns, you stupid people. Lots of love, Will. Really appreciate it.
Abuse the audience. It works. It's called negative selling, I think.
Well, we'll leave those bastards. And thank you, Will. Lots of love.
Oh, fuck off.